We all remember that moment, right? The snap, the silence, Tony Stark's final, heartbreaking words, "I am Iron Man." We cried, we cheered, we called it the perfect end to a hero's journey. But what if I told you that we've been missing the real story this whole time? What if that iconic sacrifice wasn't just about defeating Thanos, but about stopping an even greater, far more terrifying threat? And what if that threat was Tony Stark himself? Stick around, because the truth behind Tony's death is darker and more incredible than you ever imagined. It sounds like a wild comic book twist, I know. But when we start to pull on the threads left for us in Infinity War and Endgame, a completely different picture begins to emerge. One that connects directly to the multiverse saga and a villain we all know is coming, Doctor Doom. This isn't just a random theory, it's an idea built on details we all saw but maybe didn't fully process. So let's rewind and look at this from a completely new angle. It all starts on Titan. The battle is pure chaos, right? Spider-Man swinging everywhere. Star-Lord is, well, being Star-Lord and messing things up, and Mantis is trying to hold a godlike Titan down with her empathy powers. But in the middle of all that madness, there's a quiet, bizarre moment that most of us probably shrugged off. Thanos, who has just been swatting away heroes like flies, suddenly stops. He locks eyes with Tony Stark. He's not just looking at another obstacle, he's looking with something else, recognition. And then he says it, "The curse of knowledge isn't only yours." Now, on the surface, that's just another classic, cryptic Thanos line. He's the Mad Titan. He says weird, deep stuff. But we have to ask ourselves, why? Why single out Tony? Why talk about a curse? At this point, Thanos is already wielding the Soul Stone, and we know from the comics and from what we've seen in the MCU that the Soul Stone isn't about power blasts, it's about truth. It reveals the essence of a person, their destiny, their deep stuff. So in that moment, with the Soul Stone's power flowing through him, Thanos wasn't just fighting Tony Stark, he was seeing Tony Stark. He was glimpsing a future so terrifying that it gave even the Mad Titan pause. He saw what Tony could become if he was allowed to survive. This is where things get really interesting, because it connects directly to Doctor Strange. Remember, he looked into 14 million futures and found only one where they win. We took him at his word, but then Multiverse of Madness came along and showed us the Illuminati's universe, where they literally killed Thanos with ease. So, was Strange lying? Well, not exactly, but he wasn't being entirely honest either. He didn't find just one winning timeline. He found one winning timeline that had a very specific, non-negotiable condition: Tony Stark must die. Think about that. Strange, armed with the knowledge of every possible outcome, didn't just choose a victory. He chose the only victory where Tony doesn't make it out alive. Why would he do that? Unless winning the battle against Thanos was only half the problem. The other half was preventing something much worse from rising after the battle. Strange saw the same terrifying future that Thanos glimpsed on Titan, a future where Tony Stark, burdened by his genius and his trauma, evolves into the most dangerous being in the multiverse. He saw the birth of Doctor Doom. Now, I can already hear some of you thinking, whoa, hold on, that's a huge leap, but is it? Let's break down the evidence, because the parallels between Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom are honestly staggering. First, you have the genius-level intellect. That's a check for both. Mastery of technology that borders on magic? Tony built a nanosuit in a cave. He built an AI to protect the world. That's a definite check. But the most crucial similarity is their psychology. It's the arrogance, the unshakable belief that they are the only ones who can fix things, that their way is the only right way. We've seen this in Tony time and time again. This is the man who created Ultron because he decided unilaterally that the world needed a suit of armor. He didn't ask for a vote. He didn't consult the team. He saw a problem, and his solution was to build an all-powerful, sentient AI to control global security. That's not just heroic innovation, that's a dictator's mindset. It's the exact same thinking that drives Doctor Doom in the comics. Doom doesn't want to rule the world out of simple greed. He genuinely, fervently believes that only under his absolute control can humanity truly be safe and prosperous. He sees chaos and believes his order is the only solution. Sounds familiar, right? Tony's entire arc is about his inability to let go, to stop tinkering, to stop trying to control everything because he's so haunted by his failures and his fears. He wears his armor as a literal mask. Doom wears his iron mask to hide his scars, both physical and emotional. They are two sides of the same coin. The seeds of doom were always there in Tony, watered by every battle, every loss, every time he felt he wasn't enough. And both Strange and Thanos, in their own ways, saw those seeds beginning to sprout. Let's pause and really get into Thanos' perspective here, because it recontextualizes that entire fight on Titan. We're so used to seeing him as this genocidal maniac, and he is, but in his own twisted way, he truly believed he was a savior. He was burdened by a terrible truth, his solution to overpopulation, and he carried it out with brutal conviction. So when he's on Titan, armed with the Soul Stone, and he stares into the very soul of Tony Stark, what does he see? He doesn't just see a hero, he sees a man carrying a similar terrible burden. He sees a genius so terrified of loss that he will eventually stop at nothing to prevent it. He sees a future where Stark inventions become tyrannical, where his need to protect morphs into a need to dominate. Thanos realized that if Tony survived, the universe wouldn't face another chaotic threat like himself. It would face something far more organized, intelligent, and inescapable. It would face doom. So when he says, "The curse of knowledge isn't only yours," it's not a moment of sympathy, it's a moment of chilling recognition. It's him saying, "I know the weight you carry, I know the dark path it leads down, because I walk it too." This explains why he doesn't kill Tony when he has the chance. He stabs him, leaves him mortally wounded, but doesn't finish the job. Most saw that as random mercy, a sign of respect. But what if it was because he knew? He knew that Tony's destiny wasn't for him to decide. He knew the timeline itself would take care of it. And this is where Doctor Strange's master plan clicks into place. He saw all of this. He saw the 14 million futures, and he saw the Doom future. His goal wasn't just to beat Thanos, it was to make sure that victory didn't accidentally create a monster. Watch his behavior in Endgame again, it's so calculated. During the final epic battle, when everything is on the line, Strange doesn't yell instructions to Tony, he doesn't give a speech. He simply holds up one finger, the signal. But look at his face in the moments after Tony snaps. Everyone else is shattered, overcome with grief. But Strange, he looks calm, resigned, almost relieved. It's not the face of someone who just lost a comrade. It's the face of someone whose long, complicated, and impossible plan has finally worked. He didn't just secure a victory, he successfully pruned the future. He guided events meticulously to ensure that Tony Stark would make the choice himself. The choice to sacrifice himself, to die a hero, and in doing so, never live long enough to become the villain. He gave Tony the perfect noble out. It's actually kind of beautiful and tragic all at once. Strange couldn't just tell Tony, "Hey, by the way, if you live, you'll become a multiversal tyrant." Tony would have fought it, resisted it, and probably accelerated his own transformation out of sheer stubbornness and fear. Strange had to make him choose it, believing it was purely for the good of everyone. He had to manipulate the master manipulator, and this adds a whole new layer to their tense relationship throughout Infinity War. Their bickering wasn't just two arrogant guys clashing egos. Strange was wary, he was nervous. He had seen the destination of Tony's path, and he was trying to gently, subtly steer the car without tipping off the driver. Every eye roll, every sarcastic comment from Strange was underpinned by this terrifying knowledge. He was constantly looking at Tony and seeing the ghost of doom lurking behind his eyes. This also explains one of the biggest head-scratchers in Infinity War. Strange makes this huge deal about protecting the Time Stone at all costs. He tells Tony and Peter point blank that he'd let them die before he'd give it up, but then, when the moment comes, he just hands it over. He trades the stone for Tony's life. It seemed contradictory at the time, but now it makes perfect sense. It was all part of the plan. He needed Tony alive. He needed him to make it to the final battle on Earth. He needed him to be there, in that specific place, at that specific time, with those specific stones, to make that specific choice. Giving up the Time Stone wasn't a failure. It was a strategic move in a game only Strange was playing. He was setting Tony on the path to his own heroic demise. Now, we've all been loving the multiverse stuff, right? Loki, What If, Spider-Man, No Way Home, it's all expanding the game. And it's giving us proof of concept for this very theory. In What If, we see Tony Stark variants who are not so heroic. In one episode, his arrogance gets him killed by Killmonger. In another, his technology leads to a victorious Ultron who obliterates entire universes. The show reinforces a pattern. When Tony Stark survives and keeps tinkering, things tend to go very badly. The multiverse itself seems to fear a living Tony Stark more than a dead one. And if Marvel is building towards Secret Wars and the introduction of Doctor Doom as this massive, multiversal level threat, what bigger, more emotional twist could there be than to reveal that Doom isn't some new character from a country we've never seen? What if he is, in fact, a Tony Stark from a universe where he didn't snap? A universe where he survived Endgame, where he absorbed the knowledge and power of the Infinity Stones, and where his brilliant, obsessive mind slowly twisted into something terrifying. Imagine the emotional impact on the Avengers, on Pepper, on Peter Parker, to have to face a villain who is, in every way, the man they loved and mourned. That's storytelling gold. Alright, quick break from the multiversal madness to ask you a tiny favor. If this deep dive is blowing your mind even a little bit, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button and the like button. It genuinely helps the channel out more than you know, and it tells YouTube you want more content like this. Plus, it's free, and you'll look super smart in front of the algorithm. Okay, back to the theory. We also have to consider the Infinity Stones themselves and their corrupting influence. We've seen it time and again. The Mind Stone unlocked Wanda's powers and trauma, setting her on a path to becoming the Scarlet Witch. The Space Stone turned Carol Danvers into a cosmic powerhouse. These stones change people. Now, imagine Tony Stark, a mere human, wielding all 6 stones. Even for a second, that exposure would leave a mark. It would imprint cosmic knowledge onto his already unparalleled intellect. If he had survived, he wouldn't have just gone home to retire. He would have returned with the secrets of the universe burning in his brain. And with Tony's personality, that knowledge wouldn't lead to quiet contemplation. It would lead to obsession. It would lead to him trying to build, to control, to perfect reality itself. It's the perfect recipe for a descent into doom. This theory reframes the entire Infinity Saga. It wasn't just a war against a big purple guy. It was a silent, secret war for Tony Stark's soul. On one side, you had Thanos, who saw the potential for doom and tried to kill it directly. On the other, you had Doctor Strange, who saw the same potential and manipulated fate to allow Tony to kill it himself nobly. 2 enemies, united by a shared, terrifying knowledge. Tony's sacrifice was the only way to save the universe from its greatest hero. He died to save everyone from himself. And that, honestly, makes his final act even more powerful. He wasn't just defeating Thanos, he was defeating his own worst potential. He was ensuring his legacy remained one of heroism, not tyranny. Strange's calm face at the end wasn't coldness, it was profound relief and respect. He had successfully guided his friend to the only ending that preserved his goodness. As we look ahead to the Multiverse saga, this theory sets the stage for an unimaginably emotional confrontation. The arrival of Doctor Doom won't just be the introduction of a new villain, it will be the return of a ghost. It will force our heroes to confront the terrifying what-if of Tony Stark, and to thank the original Doctor Strange for ensuring that in their universe, that particular what-if never came to pass. The Infinity Saga was about stopping Thanos, but it was also about preventing Iron Doom. And that secret war is the most fascinating story the MCU never told us outright until now. So if this theory holds water, and both Thanos and Strange were secretly working to prevent Tony Stark from becoming the universe's greatest threat, we have to ask the next logical question: why? What is it about Tony that makes him such a perfect candidate for a multiversal tyrant? It's not just about being smart or building cool suits. We have to dig into the very core of his character, the flaws that made him a hero, but also made him dangerously close to a villain. And to do that, we need to go all the way back to the beginning. Think about Tony's very first scene in the MCU. He's not a hero, he's an arrogant weapons dealer, charming and brilliant, but utterly reckless. His company, Stark Industries, thrived on chaos and destruction. It took a near-death experience, and seeing his own weapons used against innocent people for him to change direction. But here's the crucial part, he never really escaped that original wiring. He didn't stop building weapons, he just changed the target. His Iron Man suits are weapons. Ultron was a weapon meant to be a global shield. His entire satellite network in Spider-Man Far From Home was a weapon, albeit one he intended for good. The impulse to create tools of immense power and control was always there, baked into his DNA. It's the same impulse that drives Victor Von Doom. Doom doesn't see his armies and Doombots as tools of oppression, he sees them as necessary instruments for imposing his idea of order on a chaotic world. The line between Iron Man and Doctor Doom is terrifyingly thin because they both start from the same place, a belief that they are the only ones smart enough to fix the world's problems. This pattern of control is everywhere in Tony's journey. Remember his vision in Age of Ultron? Wanda messes with his head, and he sees the Avengers dead, a Chitauri invasion succeeding, and himself as the sole survivor who wasn't enough. That vision wasn't just a spooky nightmare, it was a window into his deepest psyche. His greatest fear isn't dying, it's failing to prevent the disaster. It's being too late. And his response to that fear is to try and build a system so powerful that he can never be too late again. So he creates Ultron. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and Tony's intentions are the best and most dangerous kind. He is so terrified of his vision coming true that he almost makes it happen himself. That is a classic Doom move. In the comics, Doom is often driven by visions of a future where Reed Richards fails and the world burns, and he uses that fear to justify his own brutal takeover. He genuinely believes he is the only one who can save everyone, even if it means enslaving them first. Tony was on that exact same path. We even see it in his politics. The Sokovia Accords and Civil War are a perfect example. On the surface, it's about oversight and responsibility. But Tony's push for it is deeply authoritarian. He's willing to sign away his friends' freedoms, hunt down Captain America, and side with General Thaddeus Ross because he believes so fervently that he knows best. He believes that control, centralized through him and his systems, is the only way to keep everyone safe. It's protection through submission. That's not a hero talking, that's a dictator in the making. Doom's entire philosophy is built on this. He protects Latveria with an iron fist, and its citizens live in a gilded cage, safe, but not free. Tony's arc is a constant battle between his desire to do good and his uncontrollable need to be in charge of how that good gets done. And let's talk about his iconic line, "I am Iron Man." We cheer every time he says it. It's a declaration of identity, of taking responsibility, but it's also a trap. He can't escape being Iron Man. The suit, the tech, the identity, it consumes him. He is defined by his creation. Now think about Doctor Doom. He is never not Doom. His armor is his skin. His identity is his power. He declares, "I am Doom," with the same finality. For both of them, the line between man and mask has completely blurred. Tony's final, "I am Iron Man" in Endgame was the perfect, heroic end to that identity. But what if he had said it again 10 years later, after a decade of trying to control an ever more chaotic multiverse? Would it sound heroic, or would it sound like a tyrant cementing his reign? Strange, having seen those dark futures, made sure we never had to find out. This brings us to the Infinity Stones and their corrupting influence because it's a huge piece of the puzzle. We've seen how even brief contact with these cosmic objects changes people. The conflict wouldn't be about good versus evil. It would be a clash of two titanic egos, each believing their way is the only way to save existence, each willing to sacrifice anything and everything to impose their vision of order upon the multiverse. It would be a war that could shatter reality itself. And this is where Stephen Strange's actions in Endgame take on an even larger, multiversal significance. By guiding events to ensure Tony's sacrificial death, Strange wasn't just saving one universe from an Iron Doom. He might have been saving the entire multiverse from a catastrophic war between Kang and a Tony Stark, so powerful he had become Doom. He pruned that dangerous branch himself, in the most merciful way possible, long before Kang's TVA even knew it existed. That calm, almost relieved look on Strange's face after the snap? That's the look of a man who knows he just prevented a conflict that would have made the fight against Thanos look like a schoolyard scuffle. He didn't just beat the Mad Titan, he outmaneuvered the Conqueror of Time before he even arrived. He saw a future where two control-obsessed geniuses would tear the fabric of everything apart in a battle for supremacy, and he made sure it never happened. In a way, Strange did Kang's job for him, but for a noble reason, to preserve free will and prevent universal domination, not to enforce it.